This TFMR podcast is brought to you by your friends at JM Bullion. Visit jmbullion.com for all your gold and silver bullion needs. Welcome back to your TF Metals Report podcast highlights for the last week of June 2024. Last week of June, last week of the first half of the year. Very important week, as we're going to be painting not only the monthly charts, but the quarterly charts. Those quarterly charts, so important for the long-term trend, bigger picture, the stuff that gets the big institutional money off the sidelines. So we wanted to finish the week strong. As we began the week back on Monday the 24th, we took a look at the daily chart, not only of COMEX gold, but of COMEX silver. We noticed a similarity to how gold traded in the back part of 2023, December, January, February, a breakout, but then a consolidation. It's a lot like what we see now. So it was all part of the discussion as the week began on Monday the 24th. Then this is what I wanted to show you the most. This is April gold for this year, going back to October of last year. Remember the terrorist attacks on October the 7th in Israel, and then price shot higher, okay, after kind of going sideways. Okay, now look see how this works? This is the 50-day moving average on here. So we got up through the 50-day with that big green bar in the middle of October, tested it for support, rallied all the way up to, 2060, came down, middle of November, tested the support, rallied to the high, came back down, tested the support, blasted higher again with the December FOMC, came up and double topped. Now we're going down. Falls below the 50-day, tries to get above, and is immediately reversed. You see that in the red circle, the first red circle? Does that sound familiar? Tries to get some restarted on the momentum. The banks know they've taken the momentum, and so they keep the pressure on. So you get one day, big green bar in the middle of January there, above the 50-day. It gets immediately reversed and driven back lower. Stays below it. Gets to the end of January, early February, 2 candles above, and then immediately gets reversed, and then plunges out in the middle of February on Valentine's Day, and we're all like, oh crap, we're barely holding 2,000. And then you know what happened next. Well, what happened next is on the next chart. Part of our daily podcast on Tuesday, June the 25th. It's been trading sideways and downward now for about 6 weeks, just a consolidation of the massive gains that it had back in April and the first half of May. This is how COMEX price moves, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We're currently in that 1 step back phase. How much longer might that go on? That was all part of the discussion on Tuesday, the 25th. But silver, on the other hand, like I said, everything else went down to its 50-day, so we felt silver probably would, and it did. Everything broke below its 50-day, so I was kind of worried that it would. And after holding it as support for a week and a half, finally today they smashed it. Down through the 50-day. Down through $29 support. Down through the trend line. Okay? Now, maybe we'll turn right around and recover tomorrow and get right back above. Okay, that's what, when we first barely closed below the 50-day, week before last? Okay, we came right back. So let's watch to see what happens tomorrow. Tomorrow would be the key. Continue to sell off, get a little bit deeper tomorrow. Then we're probably going to 28.50-ish. So we'll watch tomorrow very closely. Again, the end of the month, the end of the quarter is looming. So we spent some time looking at the monthly chart here this last week of June. On Wednesday the 26th, we looked at the monthly chart of spot gold. Does it have any clues as to what's coming not only for gold, but what's coming for silver if we could finish the month strong? So here's a look at that monthly chart of COMEX gold, at least as it was back on Wednesday the 26th. Your next to last, your penultimate chart of the day. It's the monthly chart of COMEX gold. Now this is just the last 10 years, but I wanted to zoom in on this because you know what's going on here, right? Kind of going sideways, rallying 19 into 20 with COVID, and then going sideways for the better part of 3 years, banging up. This is spot gold, banging up against 2,000, never being able to close above. Even October last year, couldn't quite get there, but then finally got above in November. That's the first green candle above the red line. Okay? Finally, a monthly breakout. A quarterly breakout followed with a higher close in December. But look at this. After the monthly breakout above 2,000, it took 3 months. Remember I walked you through the daily chart just a couple days ago? It took 3 months of support and consolidating above the old resistance, and then boom, took off. Okay? So that with that in mind, look at the last chart of the day, silver. We focus on the dollar index almost every day in our daily podcast. We haven't talked about it yet this week in terms of this podcast summary. So let's do that here for the Thursday podcast on the 27th. The dollar chart, kind of self-explanatory. Sure looks like it's in a short-term uptrend. Looks like it wants to go back up to those most recent highs north of 106. If that's the case, probably going to be a headwind, at least for the first couple of weeks of July, and that obviously will imply some pressure on the precious metals. Anyway, we don't know that for sure, but the chart sure looks that way, and that was all part of the discussion. Thursday, June 27. Dollar index, I put the 50-day moving average on here so you can see. I'm worried that this is about to go higher. I'm worried it's going to go higher tomorrow. So again, you can see why I'm just worried in general. But notice with the 50-day moving average what's gone on here, okay? And especially since about March, fell below, got above in April, then tested it as support, and then shot higher to 106.5 by mid-April, right? Double topped, came down, held the 50-day as support in early May, but then blasted through about a week later. Stayed below, tried to get above, green candle, then immediately red candle back below. About a week later, green candle at the end of May, then back below. At this point, we're thinking, back in early June, it's like, okay, this is going in our direction. Wrong. We are now 2 points higher. Try to get back above 105 and the 50-day 2 weeks ago, back down, then back up, and then last week it used the 50-day as support. I walk you through all of this just to point out to you that this looks to me like it wants to go higher. Now, I'd love to be wrong, especially tomorrow. But this looks like it wants to go higher. We shall see. And on Friday, June 28th, we wrap the month, the quarter, and the first half of the year. Can you believe that? Where does the time go? And it was a heck of a quarter and month for silver prices. Your final chart of the week is the spot chart for silver. As you can see, great quarter, up over $4 on the quarter and breaking out on the quarterly chart above $28. Now, if this sounds familiar, you recall that gold could not break out and get above $2,000 an ounce until November of last year, and then finished above 2,000 on the quarterly chart. That got the attention of the house, private accounts, the hedge funds, the institutions, and after a couple of months of holding 2,000 as support, gold then took off with massive rally in March, April, and into May, and still remains high. We'll expect the same out of silver now that silver has broken out on its quarterly chart. Doesn't mean it's going up next week or maybe in July, but as long as it maintains now above 28 and 29, the next leg of the rally will be coming because the long-term quarterly chart is so strong. Again, the best quarterly close for the silver price since the end of December 2012. Almost 14 years. Again, that's noteworthy for the long-term trend, and it's a long-term trend that big institutional investors pay attention to. So, very strong quarterly close for silver prices. That's it for this week. Thank you for listening. We will not have one of these podcast summaries next week as July begins, so check back in 2 weeks for another edition of the TF Metals Report podcast highlights. Thanks for listening.